You know, Jay, it's almost Christmas time, and I think about my wife asking me this question. I say, what do you buy a hunter?
What do you buy the hunter that has everything?
What do you?
I would say number one on my list this year would be the ScentLock Enforcer.
It's a personal ozone generator.
A lot of people have been asking me about it. Can I use it in my gym bag? The answer is yes. It's great for hockey players. It's great for football players. Dusty, you use them in your boots.
I know some friends of mine that throw trash and put it in their truck. And you know what? It's compact, lightweight. It's about the size of an iPhone. If your phone battery is getting low, it's got a USB port on it. It's got a 1 hour setting, a 3 hour setting for the ozone. It's amazing, Jake.
It really is. I really think this is the perfect gift because this is kind of brand new. Like, this has not been around for a very long time. Put it in your tote. You can put it in your hanging closet, and it'll clean your clothes almost as good as running it through the laundry. The point being is that this particular item is one thing that the hunter in your life doesn't have yet, and they'll thank you for it.
It would be something that I would so much appreciate under my tree. You know what? It'll even fit in the stocking.
Now, we talked to Tim Gothier over at ScentLock Enforcer, and he says that if you order online by December 19th, you'll receive your ScentLock Enforcer by Christmas. Or if you want to pick it up immediately, go to the ScentLock Enforcer website and check out the dealer locator. It's www.scentlock.enforcer.com. Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, powered by ScentLock Enforcer, episode number 177. Dustin Kismore, field to form, getting your buck on the wall correctly in Underfoot Moonphases. Please support our sponsors as they make this show possible. Today's show is sponsored by the ScentLock Enforcer, the Euro Hanger, and Morse's Sporting Goods. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hi, this is John Stallone with Interviews with the Masters podcast. And when I'm not editing my own podcast, I'm listening to the Big Buck Registry with Jay Scott.
Hi, this is Ken Jorgensen from Ruger. You're about to listen to my favorite podcast, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
This is Taylor Hance with Whitetail Widowmakers, and you definitely must want to be a better deer hunter because you just push play on the Big Buck Registry podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. And I know you're listening to me talk to you right now, and you push play for a reason, and that's because you wanted to get into some of the most hardcore deer hunting information that you can. And believe me, you're tuned into the right place because that's what we do here on the show. We talk deer hunting all the time. And when I say we, I mean me and my good friend from Ohio, Dusty Phillips. How are you, Dusty?
Man, I am fabulous, Jay.
I bet you are. You want to tell us and fill us in on what happened?
Yeah, a mystery buck come into my setup November the 2nd there, Friday, and I put the hammer down on him.
So you're not going to eat tag soup this year?
No Ohio buck tag soup at all for me. Put down a real nice mature, heavy antlered buck, and couldn't be more happier. You know, it just doesn't get any better than that, Jay.
I'm psyched for you, brother. It's I know you've been chasing a good one for a few years, and you had some trials and tribulations with some land use this year and trying to get a good spot to hunt. And man, it all came together for you. It was fantastic.
It's just it's an amazing thing once it all comes together. Yep. And you know, you some things happen and bums you out. And you know, I lost a really good spot this year, and you know, I backtracked younger days and fell back on old property that I once hunted, and wow, it's just before it wasn't a great piece of land, and it seems like now that it's a phenomenal piece of land, and it's amazing, really. You know, I left it at one time with not very many deer sightings, and there wasn't no mature bucks there. I hunted hard, and I just knew the area really well, And now I've come back to it, and the undergrowth has really taken over and made some really nice bedding areas. And it's just amazing what 10 years can do for a piece of property.
That's a very interesting lesson in deer management right there. That's cool. That's very cool.
You don't think about it until you go see it, you know.
Right.
It's just one of the things where I walked into the area I used to hunt, and it just, man, it was like being at the store and you press that power button on a stereo that you're checking out and it blares at you.
Yep.
That was what this area did to me, and it was quite amazing, really. I got set up, and right away I had mature bucks on trail camera and quite a few does coming in. It was quite amazing. I just could not believe it, but yet with the area looking like it did visually, I knew right away that there was potential for some great bucks there. And with a little bit of venture in the woods, I found some really big scrapes. And when I say really big scrapes, I'm talking 4 to 6 footers. And when you see that on the ground and they're 4 or 5 inches deep and dirt just slung everywhere, you know that's got to be a good buck making a scrape like that.
Yep.
And real blessed to be able to put the hammer down on a real nice, heavy, mature Ohio buck.
I saw you sent me a couple pictures, and you were grinning and smirking in a way that I haven't seen you smirk yet. And I knew what it meant. I mean, like, there was so much meaning in the way your face looked. Like, yeah, I got it done finally. And it was also, emotions of, yeah, I got it done. And it's just a summary of, all the things you've gone through over the last few years trying to get a good buck. And it was all right there in your face. You couldn't be happier.
It's been since 2010 since I smashed a real good one. And every year I won't say this from experience, and I'm honored to kill any buck that I shoot and put in the freezer. Don't get me wrong. Everybody's got a big dream of killing a really great buck every year. And some people may go 4 or 5 years and kill a really nice one, but there's going to be times where you're going to struggle. I mean, the struggle is real.
Yep.
It's a mental game. It's a physical game. It beats you up, and it has me for a few years here. I've struggled to get on a really nice mature buck, and man, sure enough, this year I got into a spot that's producing them, and the genetics are there. And I've always known the genetics are in the area. I killed my 174 and 7/8 in 2010, within a mile of where I'm at. It's amazing to be in a good area that has the genetics, and that brings up something. That location is a key factor. If you know there's good bucks in an area, you got to get there. Even if you've hunted there before and now you know that there's good bucks there, you need to get back there and really check it out. And that's something I did. I backtracked. I went back to some years that passed by, and wow, it really come back to play in my favor. And I think a lot of woods that I've let go over the past, I'm going to revisit.
Nice. That's awesome. I know how you feel, or I know what you've gone through, and I've been on a little bit of a rut myself. I haven't killed what I would consider to be the buck that I would want to kill in a few years. I've had some opportunities. I've seen the buck. My gun fogged up, didn't give me the shot that I needed. There are all these little factors that come into play over the years that may keep you from killing the buck that you really wanted to kill that year. And it's definitely happened to me. In fact, this year has been really rough. I think I've only seen a couple deer in the woods, period. And I know there's sign. It's just one of those years for me. It's an off year, and I got to tell you that one of the loneliest moments in the world that you'll ever face is when it's the last day of gun season and the sun's going down and you got nothing happening. I swear, it's one of the loneliest, most empty feelings that I think I've ever felt. Is just sitting there in the deer woods, hoping that something's going to happen on the last day, and it doesn't. And you're like, oh.
It's a struggle, man.
It just deflates you, right?
And there's guys, and that go their whole life and never have opportunity, man. And I just couldn't imagine how that is, but it does happen, and it's really a super struggle, And some people, you see negativity about somebody shooting a younger buck or a small buck or even a button buck or a small doe, and I'm telling you right now, that's a bunch of bullcrap in my eyes, and I think Jay, you'll stand behind me on that. You never know what somebody's situation was or what they got going on if they don't have time to be out in the woods. And you know, they're just as proud as ever as this deer, and maybe they post it up and somebody's got some negative comment about it, you know, and that here at the Big Buck Registry, we don't have any tolerance for that kind of nature, but, you know, be supportive of every hunter, no matter what they harvest. And, you know, as long as it's legal and they're going to eat it, man, I stand behind you 100%. And I think Jay does too.
I absolutely. Whatever you decide is your whatever you decide is your trophy that day, then it's your trophy. If that's the deer you want to take, that's the deer you take, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely, you know, and really take the knowledge that you can learn right here on this show, and if you're a new listener or an old listener, go back to all the shows and listen through and take the information that's handed to you and utilize it and use it out in the woods. And I'm telling you, it will take your hunting level to the next level.
Yes, it will. Speaking of that exact thing, I got an email from a guy in Manchester, New Hampshire, a guy named Jimmy. And Jimmy had asked us about our safety harness program. Now, Jimmy has been listening to the show. And we get this a lot. Like, I was listening to your show, and I've learned a lot. Well, Jimmy was one of those guys. And he's a fairly new hunter, and he really wanted to get some education on quickly and free about the show, about how to deer hunt. And he tuned into the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast, which is, of course, what we put out each and every week. We talked to some fantastic deer hunters. And Jimmy said, "Hey, I'm a big fan of the show, and I'd like to take you up on your offer because I don't have a lot of bucks to spend on safety harnesses, and I'd really like to use one because I want to get into the trees next year." So I drove to his dad's house and left it in his mailbox because it was close enough to my house to do that.
That's very cool.
It was pretty cool. So if you'd like to get on board with this program we're running, the safety harness program, we need safety harnesses, but we'd also like to know if you need one. So we have some coming in. Neil's back from Maine, where he shot another big deer, by the way. Neil Pendleton, who was a guest on our show a little while back, he's jumped on board to donate all of his packaged, still good safety harnesses, and we're going to connect with him. He's got about 5. We've got Crystal Mahoney and Taylor Hance, who's a future guest on our show. They're coming up next week. They've agreed to donate to our cause. So we've got stuff coming in, and if you need some, we have a small waiting list, so we were waiting to replenish the supplies. But if you need one, all you have to do is send an email to jay@bigbuckregistry.com or dusty@bigbuckregistry.com or jim@bigbuckregistry.com. Just let us know that you need a safety harness.
Yeah, if you got extra safety harnesses, if you would check the expiration date. If they're good, legit safety harnesses, get with us. And if you be willing to donate it, we'll get you an address to ship them out to us. And like I said, send us an email. We'll get hooked up, and we appreciate that.
Yes, very much so. So this week's guest is Dustin Kismore, and Dustin is a taxidermist, and he's a hunter. And as we usually do, we're going to break down his deer hunting techniques, find out how he goes about strategizing for his hunt, find out what he brings into the woods with him, what makes him tick in the deer woods, what makes him successful. But overall, what we're trying to do, because he is a taxidermist, we're talking about field to form. What can you do when you're in the woods, when you have a deer down that you want to have mounted? What are all those little things you need to do along the way to make sure it makes a good mount on your wall, and how do you find a good taxidermist? So we're going to talk to Dustin Kismore about that. But before we turn to Dustin, let's turn to Jim Keller with the deer news.
The deer news this week is sponsored by the Euro Hanger. You don't have to spend big bucks to hang your big buck. Get yourself a Euro Hanger. Facebook.com/Eurohanger, EUROHANGER.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News. Our first story this week: Exodus Place appoints Ted Nugent as ambassador. This story was featured on the deeranddeerhunting.com website and was written by Keith Barnett. Exodus Place, a nonprofit that cares for homeless military veterans, has announced rock legend Ted Nugent is joining them as ambassador. Nugent is supporting the nonprofit with the goal of making Michigan the leading state in achieving zero military veteran homelessness. The musician believes with everyone's support, it's achievable. Ted has the heart for our military and has agreed with our president that this is the time to complete this mission and give military veterans all the help they need, said Rob Munger, a company representative. We are very excited about this development, and we hope that it will further push us towards our ultimate goal of eradicating military veteran homelessness in Michigan. Exodus Place provides more than just shelter and 3 hot meals a day. They help to locate, rehabilitate, and develop veterans going through a difficult challenge. They also provide medical needs, clothing, personal hygiene materials, and bedrooms with lamps, hangers, pillows, and dressers. The organization also provides access to education and college so that veterans can acquire new skills which will improve their chances of getting a new job and starting a new life. Ted Nugent is an American musician, lifelong outdoorsman, and political activist. He is committed to utilizing every resource to ensure that no veteran remains homeless in the state of Michigan. One antlered deer moves into Harlem's Jackie Robinson Park. This article was featured on the DNAinfo.com website and was written by D'Artenuro Clark. A one-antlered deer has been wandering the grounds of Jackie Robinson Park, according to neighbors in West Harlem. Yane Halu, who lives across from the park, said she has seen the buck strolling through the park for the past week. Halu said there were once 2 other deer, another adult and a fawn, but they haven't been seen recently. A spokesman for the city park department confirmed that there is 1 deer in that park, but the department has also received reports of multiple deer in the area. She also said park rangers were deployed to the park early Thursday to assess the situation. As of now, she said, the department will continue to monitor the deer. If it poses a threat to humans or is injured, the department will intervene, she added. The spokeswoman said the guidelines from the state's Department of Environmental Conservation prohibit capture and relocation. She added that if city agencies capture the wandering deer, it would have to be euthanized. Bewildered residents have taken to social media after spotting a deer in an urban jungle. Illinois gun hunters kill 79,000 deer. This story was originally posted on the Illinois News Tribune website and was reported by Jeff Dankert. Hunters killed a preliminary total of 79,429 deer during the 7-day firearms season, an 8% drop from last year's season, according to the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. The season was split into 2 parts, November 18th through 20th and December 1st through 4th, and totals were down in both seasons compared to last year. The top 5 counties for the most deer killed were Adams, Randolph, Jackson, Pike, and Fulton. They each had totals over 2,000 deer, but less than last year, according to the DNR. Firearm deer hunting has not yet ended. The second muzzleloader season runs December 9th through 11th. There will be 2 seasons for late winter chronic wasting disease, county-specific gun hunting on December 29th to January 1st and January 13th through 15th. Deer hunting will necessitate periodic closures of public areas during gun seasons, according to the DNR. Since 2013, Illinois annual harvests had been on a steady increase, with the exception of this year. Lawmakers want tougher poaching penalties in Missouri. This story was originally reported in the Springfield News Leader website and was reported by Wes Johnson. A Republican state lawmaker from Cape Girardeau County has pre-filed a bill that would force Missouri poachers to pay large restitution fines if they're caught. Representative Donna Lichtenegger's HB 46 is similar to one that failed to gain traction earlier this year when it was filed by Representative Linda Black, who is leaving the House because she has reached her term limit. Lichtenegger's bill calls for anyone convicted of illegal killing a turkey, deer, elk, or black bear to pay restitution into the state school fund. The amounts in the bill are $750 for each wild turkey killed, $1,500 for each white-tailed deer killed, $3,500 for each black bear or elk killed. There is no hunting season in Missouri for elk or black bear, but that has not stopped poachers from killing them. She said she hoped the restitution fines would help deter people from illegally killing Missouri's wildlife resources. She also said she was open to increasing the restitution fines in her bill if other lawmakers would support heftier fines. A News Leader investigation into poaching laws found that Missouri's poaching fines are significantly lower than those in many other states. 2 high-profile poaching cases earlier this year, the killing of a black bear where the poacher was fined only $99.50, and the still unsolved case of a Missouri elk killed only for its antlers and left to rot, prompted one Missouri citizen to launch a petition urging tougher penalties for poachers. The online petition by Sarah Cox, who lives near St. Louis, currently has more than 7,200 signatures. It supports Linda Black's poaching restitution bill and also calls for new laws that would allow states officials to confiscate gear, equipment, and vehicles used by the poacher. Special thanks to Daniel Applebaum, who has been keeping us up to date on the progress of this bill. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have any questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Thanks to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here's Dustin Kismore.
Dustin Kismore, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
We're psyched to have you. You know, this is when you had reached out to us and gave me a premise for the show. I thought it was a great idea. Obviously, we're in many parts of the country. We're kind of in that last push of rut. There's still plenty of hunting left to do in many parts of the country. Some of the seasons are winding up. So now is probably a really good time to talk about taxidermy and what to do with those caped mounts or the capes and what kind of mount you're going to put them in. And hopefully, if you haven't got one yet, there's some things we're going to get into that is all about what you should do in the field so that it ends up on the mount correctly, the field to form, in other words.
Yes.
And that's what you presented to me the other day, and I said, that sounds like a really good topic. So let's looking forward to getting into that. And it's always an honor to talk to anybody that's in the field that is as passionate about deer hunting as me and Dusty. So thank you and welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks. I really appreciate it, guys. I just want to say right off the bat that I got turned on to your podcast through a coworker probably 4 or 5 months ago. And I'm being completely honest here when I say that I have probably gained as much knowledge about effective ways to hunt whitetails in just that time as I have in my career of hunting. So, I mean, what you do is great, and I just am really honored to be a part of it.
I appreciate that. And Dusty and I work hard to bring that content each and every week. And, I'm right there with you, though. I mean, I've learned a lot from this show, just starting it way back, and I've learned a lot about how to hunt whitetail in different parts of the country.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, learned a lot about how to hunt deer I've never hunted before. So it's been really pretty good. So Dustin, tell us about yourself. Where are you from?
I live in Portage County, Ohio, which is in the northeast corner, about 40 minutes kind of south of Cleveland. We are famous in the whitetail world for the hole in the horn buck, which I think anybody that's ever picked up a hunting magazine has at least seen a picture of that deer. It came from Ravenna, which is the county seat of Portage County. And that's what makes that famous. The town I live in is Suffield, Ohio, and we are probably known most for being the home of the Goodyear blimp, and 10 Point Crossbows are built right here in Suffield, Ohio. So,
all right, very good. All right,
that's where we get our notoriety.
So, Dusty's also from Ohio, as you know. So, got some Buckeyes on the line today. That's awesome. That's okay. So now I'm getting the picture of where you're from, and it definitely sounds like you're into some pretty historic places. Definitely, I mean, Cross Point is huge.
Right.
Great crossbows. Now, did you grow up there?
Yeah, I was born and raised here in Suffield. I actually ran 10 Point has a pro shop here that was founded by the founders of 10 Point 50 years ago. It was Portage Archery Center was the name at the time. They've since changed the name, but I managed that pro shop for 1 year prior to just going on into other career endeavors. But, that was really exciting for me and a great field to be in as far as being surrounded by all of the hunting community around here and, learning a lot as far as the ins and outs of both the industry and, the technical aspect of archery equipment. So that was also quite an experience.
Gotcha. You've been in taxidermy for a little bit, and as you had noted, you actually mounted Bill Wilson's buck, and Bill Wilson was a guest on our show a while back. Shot a fantastic deer. Tell us about that experience.
Well, something interesting I can tell you about Bill that he didn't mention on the show is he had brought us a buck probably, 5 to 6 years before that, maybe longer. Don't quote me directly on that, but he had killed a beautiful 10 point 140, 150 class buck on public land here in Portage County that was actually a piebald. So as far as, unique trophies go, he got that great 200-inch buck, which was, really an honor to mount. But as far as uniqueness and what I think is a reflection of your skill as a hunter to get almost what would be the equivalent of a unicorn on public land, something that's, half white and in that category of deer was really something. But Bill's a fantastic hunter. We've mounted a few really good bucks for him. Obviously, that one takes the cake. And you know, it was definitely an experience. It was far and away the best buck that we mounted that year, without question.
Gotcha. Is it the best buck you've ever mounted, period? I mean, there's a lot of big deer running around Ohio.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And probably to this point, I could safely say yes. I had mentioned to you, Jay, and you shared the picture on the Facebook page. My cousin actually killed a buck 2 weeks ago that Buckmasters has scored now, and it was 240 inches, and he killed that right here in town. So
wow.
that's gonna take the record for us for biggest whitetail once we actually get to, you know, mount that one.
Once you get it all mounted up, that was a tremendous buck. I mean, that just kind of came out of nowhere. You had alluded to that it was not just a walk into the stand one day and get it done. This was a process that sounded like a 3-year journey at least.
Yeah, he put his homework in on that deer. He had hunted that deer for 2 full seasons, and was able to seal the deal on it this year. And that was a well-known buck in the area. What separated him from everybody else, though, was he was a little bit more secretive with his information, as far as, you know, actually having the deer on trail cam and having some kind of pattern with it. And he kept that information to himself, and I give him all the credit in the world for that, because that's certainly something you'd want to share with everybody.
Right.
You know, it's exciting to have a buck like that on camera. I honestly have never even had a buck that big anywhere near a trail cam of mine, so I wouldn't know, but he was very tight-lipped about it, and he just, you know, stuck his nose to the grinding wheel and stuck it out and sealed the deal. And we're all very, very happy for him.
How important do you think it is to keep that quiet when you stumble across the buck of that caliber? How important is it to keep it quiet? I mean, I think this is a key to success. And Dusty, you might want to chime in here, because I think you know a little bit about this kind of stuff. That keeping quiet is probably one of your biggest assets.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you know, obviously it did pay off for him in the end. And, you know, I think that if you can do it now, I personally am the kind of guy who, you know, being in the business I am in and talking to so many different deer hunters and sharing stories and everything, it's just something that I can't say for sure, because like I said, I've never had a buck that big on camera, but should I ever get in that situation, I don't know if I could. I'd want to share with people what, you know, I have in front of me. And I think, you know, when it comes down to if he did right because so many other people in the area knew about that deer, and, you know, you want to think the best of everybody, but somebody might be tempted to cross a property line or do something like that if they know that deer's frequenting an area near them. So it definitely paid off for him, and was probably, well, it was the right move because it worked out. So
it's a mixed bag, isn't it? Because you want to tell the world,
right?
It's a dilemma that you encounter.
Right. I mean, part of you know, at least I feel part of, you know, what makes hunting so enjoyable is to be able to share the experiences with other like-minded individuals. So you want to get out there and do that, but, you know, there's also a time for it. And if you get that buck on the ground, then it's time to share your story with the world. Right. And that's what he did.
Yep.
It's a whole different ball game when you get a great caliber buck on camera. It's hard to explain it, but you know, I'm pretty tight-lipped about what I got, just because of the fact that you just never know whose hands that picture's going to get in. The next thing you know, you got a guy that's on the property line next door to you,
right,
sitting on the trail that the buck's passing along. You know, it's tough to say what you do till you have something of that caliber on camera.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I get a lot of information that comes into me, you know, from all over the country. And sometimes it's useful for me where I am at. And sometimes that information comes from 1,000 miles away from here for me to hunt in my area. Now, you would think that it's safe to tell somebody 1,000 miles away, but in fact, it's probably not. Because now I've got, not that I have the information for hunting anywhere but here, but a lot of times people will be sharing information with somebody else 1,000 miles away, and that information ends up back in my lap for an area where I live, which is weird.
I'm not sending you any more pictures.
Well, it's safe because I'm not going to go hunt it. Like, it always ends with me, but sometimes that information that ends up in my lap is useful for my hunting area. And but that information came from 1,000 miles away. And likewise, sometimes I would think that, but you know, whoever shared that information a couple fold to the person they shared it with would never expect it to travel 1,000 miles away and then come all the way back to where it originated.
Right.
So that's how important I think being tight-lipped is actually is because of that dynamic.
Right.
It's crazy. So Dustin, what types of things do you think about? Your philosophy of hunting. What are the things that you kind of think about when you think about deer hunting?
To me, and this is something that I think about a lot. I mean, we all have a lot of time in the tree where we're not seeing deer, so you've got things running through your mind, and especially in this day and age, and with social media and some of the criticisms that you can receive for being a hunter, I personally feel as a whole hunting is gaining a little more acceptance than it's had in the past, which is a good thing. But we have to, as hunters, I think we need to, kind of all think about these things and have a philosophy about why we do it. And it needs to be something that, is deep rooted, whether it be spiritually. I look at it kind of primally, actually. This is something that we as a species have done basically, forever. And to be able to connect with nature in the way that your ancestors did when they first walked on this planet is just, it's a phenomenal experience. And I really think that being able to spend that time outdoors really, enables people to connect with, what got us to this point in time, as
Right.
the human race.
Right.
And it just, it's great. And when you get down to it at that level and you can try and explain it to somebody who hasn't experienced it, you can take the emphasis off of the kill, which, we all hunt big bucks. I'm a taxidermist. I live for big bucks. I love big bucks, but there's just so much more to it. And that's just icing on the cake of just being able to be one with nature, like humans have been forever.
Right.
So.
Gotcha. What's your earliest recollection of deer hunting?
Oh boy. I got my hunting license in Ohio when I was 5 years old. My dad actually found an instructor that was willing to give me a hunter safety course before I could even read or write. And it was a multiple choice 100-question test. And they found somebody that said that if, my mom and dad would work with me and study the books and everything, they would give me the test orally, and then I could just recite the answers.
Wow.
And at 5 years old, I got a 98 out of 100. I got 98% on the test.
That's pretty good.
So
that's better than I would do.
So I was out there, basically in my furthest memories of, I can remember standing in the garage at my parents' holding deer antlers in my pajamas of a buck that my dad had killed with a bow. That, I can't remember anything else around that. It was just, we're talking 4 or 5 years old.
Right.
I don't think I actually got out of the woods and got into a tree with him until I was probably 8 or 9. He would do double sets. My dad definitely is the man who, I got to give all the credit to everything for getting me into this, because, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be where I'm at today.
Gotcha.
And he would do, ladder sticks with double sets, and I would just sit with him while he bow hunted until I was, big enough to hunt with a crossbow and then ultimately pull a vertical bow. So
Gotcha. Very interesting.
it goes way back. Yep.
Is there anybody else in your life that influenced you in your beliefs in hunting?
It's just in our bloodline. My dad's dad was, and still is, he's 85 or 86. And, he's very limited physically to be able to get out and hunt, but he still does as much as he can. So, that's where my dad learned it from. It's come down every generation. My family originates from the mountain areas of West Virginia. And, as long as there's been wildlife to hunt, my family's lived off the land essentially.
Gotcha.
In some way, shape, or form.
Do you do most of your hunting in Ohio?
Now I do, just mostly for the reason we used to split our time pretty equally between Ohio and West Virginia, because my family still has a pretty sizable piece of land. But with 2 small boys, my sons are 4 and 10 months.
Yep.
So, I'm very blessed to have a few really good tracts of local, somewhat urban land that I can just, be in the woods in 15 minutes from the house. And, that's my primary focus now, because it's just important to stay close to home and be close to the family.
Gotcha.
But, at some point, I'm just waiting for those boys to get big enough to, be able to join me, and then we're going to be off as much as we can.
Gotcha. Very cool. I'm going to turn the mic over to Dusty here and have him kind of pick your brain about all your strategies that you use in Ohio.
Okay.
Talk about the terrain, and Dusty, feel free to open up into what it was like in West Virginia too, and compare and contrast the 2 different terrains and styles that you might have to adapt to.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do that for sure. Let's get a little bit into your gear, Dustin. Do you carry a backpack to the woods?
I actually, it's not a backpack. I guess you'd call it more of like a knapsack or a possibles bag, like what muzzleloader carriers have. It's just got a single strap, goes on my side. We had a local guy here, a company that made archery quivers, like the kind that you wear to the 3D course or the indoor range. And he made these bags, and I've just carried that forever. It's pretty handy because I can just throw it on while I'm climbing into the stand and then hanging around a bow hook.
Gotcha. What's in that particular bag?
I firmly believe in ozone. I think ozone's probably one of the best things to come along in a while. I make sure I've got a good flashlight, pair of gloves, extra release because I use a handheld release. So I want to make sure I've got one of those. I keep my knife, obviously a grunt call when the timing's right for it. And if once in a while I'll carry rattling antlers, but not all the time. And if I plan on doing an all day hunt, I make sure I have one of those cordless phone chargers so I can keep my cell phone charged.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. How important is it to have that cordless cell phone charger?
If I'm doing it all day and I'm not seeing a lot of deer, it's very important because as much as I would want to say that, I'm a super hunter who's ever vigilant no matter what's going on, we all have those times in the mid-afternoon where it's sunny and getting a little warm and, you find yourself starting to doze off and maybe, playing a game on the phone or just seeing what's going on with other hunters on social media can kind of, keep you going. But most of the time I try and make it through a sit without, putting too much emphasis on having my phone in my hand.
Right on. Gotcha. Yeah. And this is another, a safety factor there. If your phone goes dead and something happens, have that mobile charger. I tell you, it could be a matter of life and death. That's something that a lot of people don't even think about, being out there all day. If their phone goes dead, what happens if something goes wrong?
Right. Or people that are checking in with you periodically throughout the day. I think, if my phone went dead and I was safe, I'd probably be dead when I got home because my wife would not be happy if she couldn't reach me in a tree stand because she worries. So. All
right. Do you carry a permission slip from her when you go hunting?
I don't need the permission slip, I have to say.
I'm just joking.
I got to hand it to my wife. She married into hunting, a little bit of a background in her family. And, so she knows what it's all about. But when she married me, she married, a little bit more over the top and extreme than what was in her family. And she's very generous with my time in the woods. So
that's good. I'm in the same boat.
She just wants to know I'm safe. That's all.
Right. I hear you. Yeah. Not a problem there. And I understand that. What kind of bow are you carrying?
I have a Hoyt Carbon Element. It's a 2011 model. I got that when I was working at the pro shop. I've always shot Hoyt bows. I like the feel. I don't knock any bow manufacturer. Every one of them out there makes a fantastic product now. It's just it's a day and age where the technology's out there to build great stuff. I've always stuck with Hoyt. I'm very comfortable with the bow, and I know a lot of guys like to get the latest and greatest every year, but I stick with a bow for a while because once I get comfortable with it, I don't like to change it up. So
right. Any particular arrows you're shooting?
Right now I'm shooting Bloodsport. At the time they were called Impact Hunters. I don't think they make that model anymore, but they're great arrows, a small diameter carbon shaft. They got a lot of kinetic energy behind them. They fly really well.
What kind of broadhead are you tipping it with?
Right now, I am actually using a fixed blade that New Archery Products made years ago, and I've just kept sharp blades on them. They're called a Nightmare. It's a 3-blade 100 grain, and the blades are actually offset in the head, so they're like a helical fletch. They give the arrow a little extra spin in flight. Gives a little more control. I've also used Rage Hypodermics. New Archery Products makes the Kill Zone expandable. I've used those. I like them all. I just switch it up every once in a while and try something different.
Good deal. Let's get into your camouflage. When you're hunting Ohio, what kind of camo are you using?
Right now, I am using Predator. I bought a new suit of Brown Deception Predator this year. Their Whitetail G2 suit directly from their website. If you're familiar with Predator at all, it's a very open pattern camo. They call it open pattern technology. So when you're elevated, I do 99% of my hunting from a tree, and you got to think from the ground up, and those open spaces really I feel like make a difference. The urban deer I hunt, I really feel they do rely on their eyes as much as they do their noses and their ears, and right. It's definitely seemed to make a difference this season. I've had deer at very close range that know something's up, that look directly up to that tree stand, and as long as I'm motionless, they just go about their business. It seems to be some pretty good stuff.
Good deal. Let's get into a little bit about the tree stand setup. So are you a hang-on, a climber, a ground blind, a ladder stand? What are you using?
I am a hang-on guy. I used climbers for probably 10 years when I was young. Mobility of them is very nice, but I'm using the muddy stuff now, muddy tree stands and their climbing sticks. Everything they make is kind of packable and real lightweight, easy to hang, easy to take down, so I can move sets as I feel I need to. They've actually got what's called a super mount system, and it's just a plate that ratchet straps to the tree, and then you can hang different stands on different plates around. So I can do sets before season where I just put those plates up in trees that I know I might want to hunt, and then move an individual stand or two around, as the deer change their patterns or I notice different things going on in the woods.
Very good. Let's talk about the terrain that you hunt here in Ohio. Tell us a little bit about the woods that you're hunting in.
What I would consider my primary area where I've had the best luck with good deer over the last 15 years is pretty urban. We're along a major river waterway. It's a very long, narrow property, so it covers a lot of that river bottom, a lot of funnel areas, narrow down places, and that's where I've had most of my success. You wait for those first 2 weeks in November when bucks are really pushing does or, on the seeking phase between does. And, you just get in some of these pinch points and bide your time. I know a lot of guys, say it's bad to overhunt a set, but in my particular application, at least I found, you're getting transient deer that might not be on the property tomorrow, and they probably weren't there yesterday. So if you just do your time in a good funnel area, more often than not, it's going to pay off for you.
When you talk about a funnel, explain that a little bit further.
Well, like I said, there's a pretty major river on one border of our property, and then the rest of it is kind of reclaimed sand and gravel pits. So there's a lot of big open areas, and you'll just have these little strips of woods in between. You might have 40 yards of river bottom that's pretty densely wooded area with thick undergrowth, and then it might be open for quarter of a mile on one side of you, and then you got the river on the other. So the deer travel the large wood lots between these narrow down areas, and when they get on a hot doe and she gets on the move, it more often than not will bring them right to you. I mean, don't get me wrong, they definitely chase out in the open, but you get yourself in one of those funnels and bucks are on the move and things will happen.
Gotcha. Tell us about the terrain in West Virginia that you go to and hunt.
My family farm in West Virginia is in the very eastern edge of the state. They're actually one county removed from Virginia proper. So it's pretty big mountain country. My cousin that lives down there, his home, when you're looking out the front window, you're looking at Spruce Knob, which is the highest point in West Virginia. Very steep, very rocky. It's a totally different ball game down there. When you get into the timber, that's big timber, 10,000 acres of forest, and it's all oak. And, you're looking there for low areas between rocky outcrops, saddle areas, benches, things more hill country related. But, the deer down there are also a little smaller, don't have necessarily. I will say that their antler quality has gone up in recent years. As on his farm in particular, he's taken an interest in, doing some more quality management, and it's starting to reflect.
Right,
totally different style.
Do you use the same camouflage in West Virginia as you do in Ohio?
Anytime that I'm in a tree and the leaves are off, I'm using that predator stuff. Earlier in the season, I do have some mossy oak tree stand, which has got a little bit more green in it. And obviously, it's mossy oak, so it's based on oak. And when you're hunting the big timber down there, it definitely helps you to blend in.
Gotcha. What's the as far as tree stands, are you using the same there as you are here, or you do the same setup there?
It's been a couple of years since I've been down there, and when we go for just a extended weekend or something like that, I have taken my hang-on sets down there, but a lot of times that's where that climber really comes into play, because you're moving on a hunt-to-hunt basis, and it is easier just to get in there and get that climber up in the tree and do your thing.
Any particular brand of climber?
The climbers that my dad and I use are old. They're probably 20 plus years old. They were made by the Lock-On Company, which was one of the early names in tree stands. It's called a Contender, and it's an all aluminum stand. What sets this one apart from other climbers is the way the system works on it is it's got bungee cords that go to the outer bar that goes around the backside of the tree, top and bottom, and it's actually adjustable as you climb. So if the tree diameter changes dramatically, or you have a knot you need to navigate your way around, you can actually make the stand bigger or smaller as you climb the tree. to accommodate it. And it's, it's pretty handy. And, for the limited amount of use that I use my climber more, and I just try and make sure I do really good maintenance on it, and it's served me well.
Good deal. Very good. Tell us about the Ohio terrain as far as where do you pick your particular tree stand locations when you're on a river bottom that's bordering with a gravel pit?
Well, 15 years of hunting the same piece of property, you just kind of learn where the deer spend their time, and especially during certain times of the year, running trail cams and everything. But I look for, fingers of woods, or just a very narrow area where you've got a small strip of woods. And I certainly, especially from listening to your guys' podcast, you talk to guys that hunt along water features, and it just really seems like deer travel a water feature. So, I try and play, where the best prevailing winds are on that particular property, and, put myself in different places along the river depending on the wind direction to try and, keep myself out of Big Buck's nose, depending on which way I think he might be coming from.
Gotcha. Good deal.
So, Dustin, let's talk a little bit about taxidermy. You're a taxidermist. You understand all that stuff. And there's some things that, as hunters, we need to know about what we should be doing with that deer we just killed. If you plan to mount it, I would assume that there might be some things we should probably focus on that we may not focus on if it's a deer we don't plan to mount. And I don't know what those are exactly. We kind of just hand these things over to the taxidermist and hope for the best a lot of the times, I think. But
right.
You're coming to me with some information I think is going to be useful for everybody about just some little things that I think will help you make your mount better when it's all said and done. And I want to hear about some of that stuff. What do we need to know as a hunter when we are considering mounting a deer on a deer we just killed?
Okay. Well, I'll kind of go in a chronological order here, from, let's say that you've got that deer. We'll even go a little bit before that, until it's on the wall. There's just a few little things that you can do that are going to make a big difference in the end. And the first I would say is, even if you don't think that you're the kind of guy that would ever get a buck mounted, or, that you'd ever kill one worth mounting, that's not a reason to maybe not do your homework and find a reputable taxidermist before you even kill that deer.
Okay.
We're a tight-knit community of bow hunters. You're going to have a friend who's going to have mounts, and you can look at him and say, man, that really looks good. Who did that? And, you can kind of have an idea who you're going to go to and what their personal preference for what they want done with it. What I'm going to tell you is just general guidelines for what we like to see. Obviously, every taxidermist probably does things a little bit different. But what I want to talk about from here on is, things to keep that deer look nice, keep that hide fresh, and making the right cuts as far as skinning and things goes.
Okay. All right. Very good.
So starting there, you've got that big buck on the ground. You're standing there. It's fantastic. This is, the buck of a lifetime, and you want to make sure that, he gets to the taxidermist and he's looking good. So you're obviously still going to want to field dress him. And, the key there is, it's not really anything complicated. You just want to make that cut small. Once you get to that rib cage, you don't want to go any further with that cut. You don't want to risk getting up into the brisket and cutting into stuff that is going to be on your mount. We get lots of deer every year that guys slice all the way up the brisket, and it is fixable, and it's something that can be hidden. You'll never know, but don't take that unnecessary risk if it's a deer that you're going to get mounted. Make a small cut, get everything out that way.
Gotcha. All right, because I think we tend to just, some of the deer I've shot, I go pretty high to get it cooled off as fast as possible. But you're saying don't do that if it's a mountable deer.
Right. Okay. Just basically, up between the back legs to the rib cage. Once you get, all the entrails out, you can reach up in there and get that heart and lungs out, even without separating that rib cage. And you bring up, getting it cooled out as quickly as possible. And that would be the next most important thing. You can put ice in a deer that you're going to take to a taxidermist, but what we recommend, and not everybody has the opportunity to do this, but we freeze gallon jugs. Fill a gallon jug up, an old milk jug or whatever, with water, and freeze it if you have the freezer space and the cooler space to take it with you.
Yep.
And then put 2 or 3 of those in the body cavity, because the advantages to that are block ice doesn't melt as fast as bagged ice. The small individual pieces of ice have more surface area, so they tend to melt faster. And probably more importantly is ice in a jug with a cap on it is not going to leak water into that animal.
Right.
Too often we get deer in that have had bagged ice in them, which has kept them, cooled and kept everything preserved well. But that water leaks into all those skin cells and they absorb it. And it makes, once again, it's not one of the things that's going to ruin that deer for you, but it makes an awful mess, and it does increase the chances of that bacteria setting in. So,
right.
So blocks of ice are a great thing to do if you have the opportunity to do it. And if it's really warm out, you get 2 or 3 blocks of ice in a deer and wrap it in a tarp or an old blanket. And I mean, you've essentially created a cooler for yourself. Just keep it out of the sun.
Gotcha. All right. Awesome tips. All right.
Mm-hmm.
What else do we need to know?
When you're getting your deer out of the woods, you've got it field dressed and it's time to get it back to the truck. You're going to want to make that drag as short as possible. If you've got the opportunity to get a 4-wheeler or a side-by-side or even the pickup close to that deer, you want to get it up off the ground. You don't want to be dragging the deer on a shoulder that might show in the mount, because, over a distance and depending on the type of terrain you drag it on, you can actually pull that hair out. And once the longer hairs are pulled from that shoulder that you've drug it on and blood sets into that, it's almost impossible to get out. And it will show them out. So if you have to drag it, try and put it on a tarp, a sled, something like that. Get a buddy and get those antlers and get those shoulders as high up as you can until you can get it somewhere where you can, get it completely off the ground.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. What else do we have?
Let's see. Okay. If you're taking your deer to a processor, obviously, I don't think there's a processor out there that wouldn't be able to cape a deer for a mount as long as you tell them.
Okay.
But you do need to tell them, because there are different ways to skin a deer, whether it's just a doe that they're going to salt the hide and sell, or it's a mount. And what that entails, even if you skin the deer yourself, what you want to do is you want to take that buck and just picture with me, if you will. We've all seen a deer laying on its back after we field dressed it, and their front legs have a white and brown hair that meet on the back side of the front leg. Okay, so you're going to want to make a cut just above the knee all the way around that front leg, and then you want to make a cut and follow that hair pattern. It's white and brown hair on the back of the front legs. I mean, every deer has it, unless it's something like an albino, which, in that case, you better get a hold of your taxidermist before you even leave the woods. But
right.
Follow that hair and follow it back to the deer's armpit. And then essentially, if you just make a V to where you finished field dressing at that, at the bottom of that rib cage, then you can go ahead and proceed to skin the deer down the neck. What's so critical right there is that armpit skin needs to attach to the front portion of that hide. Because if you go straight across the inside of the front legs, you've cut out stuff that's critical to a shoulder mount.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Very good. Very good tips to know. Anything else that we need to know to get this hide correctly taken care of?
Once you've got it off the deer, then you definitely want to get a hold of your taxidermist as soon as possible. Keep it chilled, keep it refrigerated, or, if you can freeze it, if it's going to be a little while before you can get to a taxidermist, that's fine.
Okay.
Try and fold the hide kind of neat so that all of the skin side is enclosed, because once that dries out, it makes it hard to preserve no matter what the preservation method is. You want to try and keep that moisture in that skin. Okay. So fold it all in, keep it cool, and get a hold of your taxidermist, and, they should definitely be able to take it from there.
Gotcha. All right. Anything else?
I think up to that point, you're good. A few little tips for, being able to enjoy your mount for years and years to come. Once you've got it home, you've got it hung up, you want to keep it clean. Essentially, there shouldn't be much more to it than just doing a little, dust collects on it.
Yep.
And the easiest way to take care of that's just with a damp rag.
Okay.
And you follow the deer's hair pattern, wipe it down, wipe the antlers down, keep all that. As far as picking where to hang it in your home, you want to avoid. I know above a fireplace is an ideal for a cabin setting and everything like that, but that dry heat,
right.
That dry heat in your mount will dry it over time. It could shrink it up. It could cause it to crack in places. It's very rough on a mount. So you want to avoid that and anywhere where it's going to be exposed to smoke and sunlight. If it's hanging close to a window that's going to get a lot of direct sunlight, it will fade it out in a very short period of time. But other than that, we have mounts in our shop and I need to make sure I mention here before I get in trouble that our taxidermy business is a family business, and it's my mom and dad started it 20 years ago, and we all work together.
Gotcha.
So I have to give them all the credit in the world for getting this going, and we're all integral parts of the business, and probably couldn't do any one part of it on our own without each other. But I've kind of taken the role of the public relations guy. So
gotcha.
I do this, I do this with various groups and stuff, try and cover this stuff. But, other than that, like I said, sunlight, fireplace, keep it clean and you'll enjoy it for a lifetime. There's no reason that, that mount can't look as good the day you pass it on to your kids and grandkids as it did when you picked it up from the taxidermist.
Gotcha. Beautiful. Great tips. Anything else that we need to know? Is that about it?
I think that really covers it. Like I said, the biggest, just have a relationship with a taxidermist. Find one in your area that, has a good reputation and, has been doing it for a while. You do hear some horror stories out there about guys that, will go to somebody because it was cheap or, they promised a fast turnaround time and sometimes they skip out with the deer and it's a reality. I've heard of it happening a couple different times.
Yeah.
So, get somebody with a good reputation and get a relationship with them and they're going to walk you through every step.
Okay. What should you do if things don't go your way? Is there anything that you can do, or can you go, is there a point of no return where it's so messed up that it can't be salvaged?
Absolutely. We had, it's probably been 10 years ago. We had a guy bring us a buck on the last day of Ohio gun season in what was probably one of the warmest gun seasons on record. And the deer was already skinned. He had the head and the hide in a garbage bag with the antlers sticking out. Beautiful buck, probably in the 170-inch range, double drop tines. And as soon as we opened the bag, just the stench was overwhelming. And we said, hey, when did you kill this thing? And, I shot it on the first day. I've been driving around with it in my van showing my buddies.
Oh boy.
Well, it was beyond the point of repair. Now, what happens in that situation, because sometimes guys don't know and, it's still a great buck and they want to get it mounted. We are in the fortunate position to have a relationship with a processor, actually another family member, that, when they take in bucks that are good bucks that they know that aren't being mounted, the guy's just bringing it to process, we will take those capes. We take the measurements off of them, size them, take all the information of that hunter and keep that. And then we have spares. So a guy brings us a deer that is rotten or a set of antlers off of a buck that say he shot and wasn't able to recover for a few days, or the coyotes got to it. And there are still options there. It's going to be your antlers just with a different hide, but nobody ever has to know that but you and your taxidermist.
Right.
So you can still have a great looking mount.
Gotcha.
That'd probably be your worst case scenario. If the hide gets rotten, obviously the antlers, as long as you don't drop them, break them, which they're repairable. I mean, just about anything's repairable. But that hide's probably the number one thing that we come across that is an issue.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you for covering that. That's very helpful. And I think it'll make the difference in people getting out there and will make the difference between a good mount and a not so good mount, basically. Yep. Very good.
A whole lot of preparation before it gets to the taxidermist that often is overlooked.
Yeah, right. And that's why, I like to get this out there for everybody. I want everybody's mount to look as good as it possibly can, because that trophy, and it doesn't matter if it's your first fork horn or, Bill Wilson's 200-inch whitetail, that's your trophy. That's your memory to last a lifetime. And, I want to make sure that everybody gets as much out of that as they possibly can.
Nice. And there are little things that you can do, and you should.
I'm going to add a little something to this as far as the taxidermy side. What's the proper way to clean your mount?
We have, and I'll let you in on a little secret here. If you have a local tack shop that carries saddles for horses and stuff like that, there is a product to spray on show horses called Cowboy Magic. And I don't even know what it's based in, but it's a hair shining product. And it's a dust repellent. And we, as part of our finishing process, spray that on every one of our mounts before it leaves our shop. But if you can go pick up a little bottle of that stuff, and all you do is just spray your mount down, and then, like I had said, take that damp rag with the wipe it down with the hair pattern, and add that to it, it'll give it a real lifelike sheen. It makes that nose, look a little wetter. It makes those antlers shine like he's been rubbing on a tree, and it just gives that hair a real glow that makes it stand out.
Gotcha. What's that called again?
It's called Cowboy Magic.
Cowboy Magic. All right.
They used to actually market it as taxidermist magic and sell it in the supply catalogs. And I don't know if they don't do it anymore, or we just found that it was a little more cost effective to buy in bulk as the Cowboy Magic, but it's the same product.
Gotcha. Very cool. Very cool. Dusty, you want to get into a memorable deer hunt?
Yeah, absolutely. Dustin, what year are we going back to here?
Honestly, and it's not because my memory's shot, but I'm going to go back to about a month ago.
Gotcha. Okay. Perfect.
I took my 4-year-old son out, and he sat in a ground blind with me for the first time he'd ever went into the woods with me. And I had reservation. I didn't have high expectations. Let's just put it that way. He's 4, he gets anxious. He's very fidgety, but it was a good opportunity. The weather was right. It was a good opportunity to spend some time with him and just kind of get him, into the process of hunting. So we head out to a ground blind, and, this is, a personal goal of mine too, because ground blinds are out of my comfort zone, but I understand that, there are applications where that's necessary. And I'm trying, and, largely apart from listening to you guys, to think outside the box here a little bit, do things a little bit different than what I've always done in the past, and try different techniques. So him and I are in the ground blind, and we've got a decoy up. We're overlooking a clover food plot that we've got planted. And I had probably 4 or 5 days prior to this, I had gotten some video over a scrape on one of my trail cams of a real good 9-point, 130-inch buck, but, had some good age to him and just great looking rack. And wouldn't you know, my son and I get in that ground blind, we get all settled in, and we're not even there for 10 minutes. And I've got a decoy up, and I look out across the food plot, and that buck's standing there looking at the decoy. Okay. So at this point, I've got my left hand on my bow, and I've got my right hand on his shoulder, just kind of giving him the death grip almost, just whispering, buddy, don't move, don't make a sound, don't move, don't make a sound. And I hit the grunt call a couple of times, and this buck starts coming. And what ended up happening at that particular instance was he circled the decoy and got downwind of us. We had him at probably 35 yards at one point, but I was so proud because my son didn't do anything to spook that deer. He kept it together, and we ended up probably 45 minutes later, I was able to take a doe. A group of does came in the same situation. There were 5 does, and, he kept it together, and he kept it very quiet and still. And I was able to, start to finish a complete hunt with a harvest with my 4-year-old son. I got lots of pictures and documented the whole experience. And he might be too young to remember, but I know it's something I'm never going to forget. And ultimately 2 weeks later, I was able to take that buck out of a tree about 60 yards from where we were in the blind. So
no kidding. Very cool.
Yeah. I capped it off November 12th. I got him. Like I said, it was probably about 60 yards from where we had the encounter a couple of weeks earlier. And he was the 7th buck I'd seen that morning. It was about 10 o'clock in the morning. One thing that I try and pick up patterns from hunters that you guys interview that are successful and things that seem to be kind of across the board. And one of the big things that I have picked up on, through that and through other sources this year that I paid attention to is not the moon phase, but the position in the sky. And I've heard a lot of guys talk that, an hour either side of that moon being directly overhead or underfoot is when deer activity seems to peak. And I literally shot that buck like 10 minutes within that window of peak time of the moon being directly underfoot on that day. And then my dad was able to close the deal on a pretty good 8-point the next day, 4 minutes after that window of the moon being directly underfoot opened up. So it seems to be something that I've definitely paid attention to this year more than ever. And it seemed to have some, there's some truth to that.
Gotcha. How did you study where the moon phase was going to be that particular for your hunting season?
I have a weather app on my phone that gives the sunrise, sunset times, and it gives the moonrise and moon times. So I just, you say, okay, the moon's in the sky for 11 hours today. That means it's, 13 underfoot. So 6.5 hours after it's set, then it's going to be underfoot. So then, but I know there are products out there. I know there are moon guides, and I'm sure there are apps that just tell you that time specifically. But yeah, I was just able to use just a plain old weather app on my phone that just gave moonrise and moonset times to kind of put that together.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
Very cool. That's a good tip. That's a really good tip.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right, Dustin, I've got 10 rapid fire questions for you. I didn't prep you for these. Are you ready?
As ready as I'm going to be.
All right. Sounds good. All right. What's your number one hunting tip of all time?
Spend time in the woods. That's mine. There's a lot of emphasis on killing big bucks, and that's great. But, at the end of the day, if you're having a quality experience in the woods, then you should do that as much as you possibly can. And, even if I feel this way, even if you're over hunting a stand a little bit, as long as you're seeing deer and you're enjoying yourself, that's ultimately what matters. And to me, that goes back to my philosophy on hunting. And it's just, it's about you, and it's about enjoying yourself, and you should do that however, makes you feel the best.
Nice.
So
yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I think that's really a really good tip. All right. We all have these things that we bring into the woods with us. Sometimes they're necessities. Sometimes they're good luck charms. Sometimes they make us more successful, or we think they do. And it drives us nuts if we leave it in the truck or at home. Aside from your weapon, what's that one thing for you?
I have a little thing here that is kind of another tip, and it's something that I think is pretty essential, but you wouldn't think of it as a hunting item. And it's so essential, I actually have it bolted to my bow. A plastic cigar tube. Those tubes that like individual cigars come in are made out of plastic. They got a little cap on the top of them. Okay. I have one of those that I have had going back. It was something that my dad had before I can even remember hunting. Some guy locally made them. He made a little bracket so that you could attach that thing to your bow, and drilled a hole in the bottom. Now, the purpose of this item is every fall when the milkweed pods start to open up and that milkweed gets real light and fluffy, I go out and collect it. And I always make sure that cigar tube is packed full of milkweed. That way, while I'm sitting in my stand, even the slightest breeze, when you pull a strand of milkweed out of there and let it go, you're gonna see exactly where it's going. I mean, even if it's just a thermal current that you can't feel, that milkweed's gonna ride on it.
Right.
And there have been countless times that I've sat in my stand early in the morning and let a milkweed pod go and watched it just kind of drift away and forgotten about it. And then 10 minutes later, you'll see it come floating back by you from that direction, because as the sun comes up and it warms up and those thermals change, and, combine that with an ozone generator that you carry in the field with you. And, that's critical, because that tells you where to place that thing.
Right.
And it just, I can't be without that, because I got to know what the wind's doing all the time.
Right. Oh, that's a great idea. Very nice. What's your biggest pet peeve in life?
Oh boy. Let's see. Biggest pet peeve. I'm thinking I want to say bad drivers, but I know that's what Sam Ubel said 2 weeks ago.
That's true. Yes, Sam did say that.
I'm not going to go with that. I think probably my biggest pet peeve, you know what? I do know what it is. And it's people that spread misinformation on social media. Nothing gets to me worse than that. And, that goes back to my cousin with that great big buck that he was keeping secret. How many times have you guys seen, and I know it's going to be a lot because you follow this stuff, you'll see the same picture of a giant buck show up on a news feed on Facebook, like 5 times in a day with 5 different stories attached to it.
Right.
And, it bugs me that just things get lost in the chain, or somebody might have the malice to intentionally put that misinformation out there. I tend to think, when I see stuff on social media, if it's a great buck, I am always going to, and then the negative talkers, a guy kills a big buck and, I'd like to know what pen that came out of, or,
yes,
just immediately, they want to be venomous like that. And my theory on that is, if I see something good posted, a guy with a big buck, I'm always going to give that guy the credit until there's definitive proof otherwise. I always think to the positive for somebody that's done well on an animal. And then conversely, if I see something negative about somebody, so-and-so poached this deer, let's spread the word, I am not going to believe that or be any part of that. I want to believe in the best in all of us as hunters. And, that all that social media negativity, I probably dedicate too much time to trying to fight it with reason and logic, but it's just my thing.
Gotcha.
I want everybody out there to, be on the same page and be happy for everybody that has success.
Gotcha. That's an important one. How old are you today, Dustin?
I am 34.
All right. Being 34, what would you tell a 16-year-old Dustin Kismore, knowing what you know today about life?
Work hard and don't get yourself into debt. Yeah. Be a little more wise with your spending and, and enjoy the time that you've got in the woods. I mean, everything that's led me to the point I'm at in my life right now, I'm happy. I mean, I've got a pretty good job I'm very close to home, and I get to spend a lot of time at home, and I've got, time off in the woods. I've got great kids and a wonderful wife and a roof over my head. So everything's worked out. But yeah, if I could go back in time and tell myself, just, hold on to those nickels and dimes just a little bit longer and, maybe set a goal for yourself to have a little piece of land for your boys to hunt on in the future. But, that's still something that it's not too late for that. But
gotcha.
If I'd have started 15 years ago, I'd probably be a lot further along. That's for sure.
Gotcha. Okay. You meet a stranger in a hotel lobby at a hunting convention somewhere in the world, and they ask you what you do for a living. What do you tell them?
I would tell them that I'm a taxidermist. Even though, that's only part-time for me, I have a full-time job for a local township, and, that's what brings the actual paycheck home for me. But, my passion is doing the outdoor stuff. And, I would tell them that I'm a taxidermist because that's probably the thing I'm most proud of.
Gotcha.
And, that I really enjoy the most. So
very cool. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
I had off-brand Raisin Bran. And it's funny that you,
okay.
I remember the 10 rapid fire questions. So that's the only one I even remembered to think about. And I specifically noted when I poured it out of the box this morning, there were only 3 raisins in it.
Wow.
So I thought, oh yeah, okay.
That's really off-brand.
Yeah, maybe that's you're not just paying for the name when you buy Raisin Bran, you're getting the raisins.
More brand than raisin. Got it.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. You get your own billboard. It's a blank canvas. You can put anything you want on it. It's on the side of a highway. What would it say?
I don't want to get too deep with it, but I'd probably just put something, appreciate life. I think I'd mentioned to you, Jay, I just lost an uncle to pancreatic cancer less than a month ago, and today's actually his 52nd birthday. So it's been really hard. He was a very, very passionate hunter, sportsman. He's actually the one that had the deer processing business right here in town. So, we worked very close together, and I was close with him, and it's been a devastating blow to my family these past few months, watching him go through that and then ultimately to lose him. So it has given me a new appreciation for everything, that's for sure. And I don't want to waste a day from here on out.
Gotcha. All right. If I say the word successful to you, who's the first person that pops into your head and why?
I'm going to go with my dad right now because, he built that taxidermy business that, we're pretty reputable in this area of Ohio. We do about 200 deer heads a year, and it's almost exclusively by word of mouth. So, he took a business that, was nothing, and he started it in the basement at their house and turned it into what's now, essentially full-time through the winter months for 3 of us, for him and my mom and I.
Nice.
He worked construction for 30 plus years and was able to retire from that and just take this and run with it. And he lives life to the fullest now. There's no doubt about it. He went moose hunting in Newfoundland last year and killed a great moose. He's got a boat for Lake Erie. He walleye fishes and perch fishes all summer and fall and spends a ton of time in the woods. He took me on what was supposed to be a week-long hunt to Nebraska this fall, which we really built our whole fall of vacation around. And, unfortunately it was cut short by my uncle's passing, so we didn't get to spend a lot of time together out there, but we're definitely doing that again. And like I said, all the hard work he's put in his whole life and building that business up is what has enabled him and us to do all the things that we do. So
gotcha. Very cool.
He's definitely made it.
Okay. What's a day in the life of Dustin Kismore look like?
A regular day, I'm up, just before 6 and at work by 7 and home by 3. I do a lot of side work. Usually I head to the taxidermy shop then and work for a few hours. Right now we're in the midst of gun season, so we're totally slammed. I worked extra hard last night so that I'd have the time off to be able to do this. And that's pretty much it. Spend time with the kids and, play with them, take them. They're big enough to be in the shop with me when I'm working over there. So that's nice. that I can do that and spend time with them. And but if it's a hunting day, it's probably up a little earlier than I would be for going to work. That's for sure. And my prep regimen just involves I use ozone on my clothes before I go. I use ozone in the tree. I make sure that everything's clean. I dress at least in my outer layers once I'm to the field, and then I'm just in the tree and I'm watching that wind and I'm watching for movement.
Gotcha. All right. Let's say it's just a plain old deer hunting day.
Okay.
What does that look like?
Well, like I said, I'm up early. We usually do coffee at the taxidermy shop because we're all kind of in my family. My other uncle and his 2 sons and my dad, and my family comes up from West Virginia for the first couple months of November every year and hunts with us now. So, we get up plenty early, a couple hours earlier than we need to, just to kind of go have that time together in our taxidermy shop, hanging out, drinking coffee, kind of just shooting the breeze until it's time to head to the woods. And like I said, all my areas are pretty local. So I think the furthest drive I have to anywhere that I'm really spending a lot of time hunting is about 40 minutes.
Yep.
And, I make sure I'm in the tree a good 20 minutes to a half hour before I can even see to shoot, and get everything set up and ready to go, and just put as much time in as I can. Probably the hardest thing about, hunting that close to home and not having some kind of camp or cabin somewhere down south is, you sit there, and if you're not seeing anything for a period of time, you start thinking about the things that you should be doing at home. And, sometimes that ends up getting on your mind enough to where it forces you out of the tree a little early. But I try, to spend as much time in the tree as I can. And, that also is dependent on the time of year it is. If it's that first couple weeks in November, I'm going to be there all day, as long as, it's physically possible for me to be there all day.
Right. Gotcha. All right. Well, that's the 10 rapid fire questions. You did quite well. Thank you for going through those. And Dustin, this has been a pleasure listening to you and tell us about your life in Ohio and kind of a little bit about West Virginia and all the things that you think are important to the person that's going to have that mount done. As a taxidermist, you specifically know what to do, and it's nice that you were able to come on and share that with the world, and hopefully make those mounts a little bit better in everybody's hunting den going forward.
That's what we hope for. It doesn't matter to me who does the work for you, as long as you're satisfied with what you get and you're able to, enjoy it for a lifetime. That's what really matters.
Very cool. Dusty, you got any questions for Dustin?
Where's all the big bucks at in Ohio, Dustin?
Oh man, down around your way. You're Southwest Ohio, aren't you?
Yeah,
that seems to be. There was a big one come out of Ross County here a few weeks ago, wasn't there?
Yeah, I'm north though. I'm around Dayton.
Okay, all right. Yeah, it definitely seems like that Southwest corner. But Ohio is a big buck state. There's no doubt that it's definitely in recent years gotten quite a reputation, and they're all over the state. There's no doubt about that. It's just getting yourself locked into one and putting that time in and using all the things that you learn on Big Buck Registry to put that deer on the ground.
Well, Dustin, been an honor and a pleasure having you on the show, and we'll have to have you back again. Tell us some more deer stories, and maybe fill us in on some more taxidermy tips.
Okay, yeah, I'd love to. I really, really enjoyed this, and I appreciate the opportunity.
I thought that was an appropriate topic, as all these big deer have fallen, and as people tune into the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast, learning how to deer hunt better. Obviously, as you become better deer hunters, you're going to be killing more deer, and you're going to be probably killing better deer. And you need to know, because I imagine you're going to get these things mounted, how to appropriately and successfully get that buck from the field onto the form, so it makes a good mount. Because there are a lot of things you could do along the way that will screw up that mount. Anywhere from improper dressing to improper storage of the cape, improper cutting of the cape, improper dragging of the deer while you're bringing it bringing it back to where you're going to cut it up. There are all kinds of little things. And thank you to Dustin for sharing his knowledge as a taxidermist about what we should do when we have that opportunity.
Yeah, no doubt. There's a lot there that you might not have known, and you really should know when it comes down to getting your deer mounted.
Completely agree. Dusty, you've had a fantastic recent couple weeks. Do you have a Chubby Tines tip of the week for us?
Yeah, it's something that...
The Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morrissportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morris's Sporting Goods.
Learned at quite a younger age, and it's something that I always try to pass along. And I'm hoping out there that somebody that don't have the knowledge of this, but a buck deer will drag their feet in the snow.
Yes, that is true. One of those things to separate your tracking abilities. I've seen it firsthand, and it's a good clue, and it works. I've tracked a buck because of that exact situation, because of that exact pattern in the snow. I could tell it was a buck, and ended up almost getting that shot. And that was that one shot that my gun scope fogged up, and I couldn't get a shot before he ran off. And that was a good buck too. But it works. It works. Very nice. Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in Big Buck Studios on the mic?
You can shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. Look me up on Facebook, Chubby Tines Outdoors, or send me a follow on Instagram @ChasingAntler. Jay, where can people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
Best place to reach me is jay@bigbuckregistry.com. You can always give us a call at 724-613-2825 and leave us a voicemail there. You can always check out our Facebook page, our flagship Facebook page, where almost 250,000 die-hard deer hunting fans hang out each and every week to find out what's going on out there, who's killing the big deer, and where they're coming from. And if you would like to get in on that action, and you'd like to see what's going on, it's facebook.com/Big Buck Registry. If you'd like to get on the Facebook page with your big deer, go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck. And then all the questions that you have about how to get that buck to our page will be answered for you right there. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, all the big social media networks. Just type in Big Buck Registry wherever you go, and you'll find us. We do have our own website, bigbuckregistry.com. And if you'd like to listen to the show other than on iTunes, you can go to Stitcher, you can go to iHeartRadio now, you can go to Blueberry, and every single week our show is converted to video for YouTube and Facebook. And we also put the audio on Facebook later, but you can basically get it anywhere. Anywhere podcasts are found, every social media platform that's a major one, except for Pinterest, you'll find us out there. And I think that's everywhere we're at, Dusty.
That's a whole lot of big bucks, Jay.
Yes, sir. I'm Jay Scott.
And I'm Dusty Phillips.
This is the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Can't wait.